want to start off with something that was, I would say, a little flattering if we were to, I would say, be a little full of ourselves. But there was a nice little article written up by the New York Times. I'm not saying that they're listening to us by any means, but
You
basically,
are.
that
You kind of
VPN
are.
story that we had from last week, they did a very similar, eerily similar deep dive into basically the consolidation of the VPN industry. And honestly, I think it's a great thing if it gets more mainstream coverage and people realize that it's a bigger deal. Then more people will understand kind of the implications of the consolidation, and I guess just the types of consolidation. I mean, yeah, it was not very good in general. This quote is a pretty solid one, to say the least, in terms of basically just what do you call the conflict of interest is really the worst part, right? Owning the review service and then owning the VPNs. Even if you own a bunch of VPNs, fine. Maybe you create like different brands, kind of like a what do you call, like a Honda, Acura, Toyota, Lexus type thing. You can create different brands that do the same thing more or less and have some different level of functionality. But the tie-in with the marketing agencies and with the review sites, that's when it went from like honest, like let's grow the company, to let's be shady. And I think that's kind of probably a good thread for probably today's show is companies trying not to be shady. But
I like that. I
do you
like
guys
that
find anything
first.
new in the article?
No, I just like that first sentence in this slide. Trusting these people is really critical. I mean, you are trust when you go to the whole reason you go to the VPN is for trust. You're hoping
Yeah.
that this software will help keep you safe and secure and keep your stuff private. So much for that. I mean, with what's going on.
This reminded me of one of the recent incidents, or not so recent, a couple of years back, with Avast antivirus. Where the antivirus company is the virus, where they were tracking you and selling your information, and it's again same along the same lines. In this case, it's just a VPN. I'm sure there are a bunch of other companies in this path, unfortunately.
Does Avast have a VPN of their own? I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't. I feel like they have to. It has to fit into the into the ecosystem.
Wait till they're acquired by this company.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I wish we had that slide from last week where it's like two companies were just devouring all the VPNs starting from 2017 up to this year. And it's just astounding that you got to think that the VPNs actually start with good intentions, but you almost got to think 5 years ahead of, all right, we have this good intention. What can be done to destroy our good intentions? Because that's exactly what takes place when something good that reaches a lot of people that's meant to keep people protected in a certain instance. There's always this other element who's looks to monetize the good intention and turn the good intention into a terrible impact.
And
I'm
what
glad you
tends to
mentioned.
happen?
Or go
What
ahead.
tends to happen, Brent, is it may start with good intentions. Take WhatsApp; it started with a good intention. After that, a series of events happen. Could be investors investing with a different mindset and a different expectation. Maybe company getting acquired and some people leaving. So the people who had the good intentions and who made the right decisions early on are no longer in charge, and over a period of time, well, that degrades, and that results to, say, WhatsApp today. And my guess is it will only get worse, because they're going to be raking whatever they can from each of these products. And this happens in product after product, industry after industry. It starts with good intentions. I mean, take Google for that matter. Google started as a search company, also doing ads. Now they're an ads company, also doing search. Again, started with good intentions, but went down a whole different path. So we look at it as one entity, the Google or the company with a company name. But if you look at it, the people that are out there kind of keep moving on. That changes the direction of the company.
And plus, I guess the requirement for basically like nonstop growth, right? Every quarter has to be better than the last. So at that point, even if you have good intentions to start with, you got to start, I would say, loosening your morals a bit in order to basically find new revenue streams, which I think is what happens with a lot of these companies. there's probably a really good correlation in general with like the age of a company, with I guess how ethical or moral they are, and it's probably inversely proportional. Where basically just the longer you're around, the less trust a brand has, right? And it just slowly degrades over time because they're forced into certain types of business practices.
And if you look at the S&P 500 index, and I think go back 50 years, the average lifetime of a company used to be about 30 or 50 years. Somewhere around. Companies used to be around 30 years. If you look at it today, it's more like 15, 16 years. That tells you that the concept of longevity doesn't last. And there might be another factor there. Like we are in the middle of the pandemic, we are talking about supply chain issues, shortages, and whatnot. Maybe we have a shortage of people with good intentions, or maybe or with people in position with the right moral compass, because the companies these days are going down the wrong path. I think that supply of or the inventory of people making decisions with good intentions is hard to come by these days.
Or you mentioned another thing. As a company grows, the potential to be acquired, and a whole other set of people are making the big decisions, and maybe the folks that had the original good intentions aren't even there any longer.
Exactly.
So you're kind of left with what we have today.
So what happens typically, Brent, is the people that got in early, they are vested. They after they go public or get acquired, they cash out, move on, and the employees that join after that, what happens to them? Now they are responsible for sky high expectations from the investors. Now what do? They have to deliver. And they probably realize that the previous batch who got in all the money, they squeezed every ounce they can with the business that they created with good intentions, and there are no more good intentions left out there. So they are left with holding the bag, and they have to go down this path. And that also happens.
I'm also convinced that like you were saying earlier about like maybe not as many people with good intentions or good morals, but I'm convinced that like the larger the company, the more I would say like the smarter play is you basically buy up people with good intentions and then you park them. The best example, or not the best example, but a relatable example is like in that TV show Silicon Valley, they have like the roof where basically they just put people to like sit. And so you pay these like extremely smart, talented people, top graduates of like universities or accomplished a lot, and you throw, $1 million, 2 million in stocks at them and give them a cushy job and make them feel like they're doing something impactful. And that's what a lot of these, I think, larger tech companies basically do, where you've got a lot of, quality talent, and that talent is being wasted on, how can I optimize ads that are being served rather than maybe something that's probably more productive for society because the paychecks are flowing in a certain direction, right? So it's kind of just like hoarding the people with good intentions and then boxing them up so they can't really do much outside.
And it has happened in the past in the other industries where you take some critical components of your competition and hoard them, and you may or may not need all the material, but you hoard them. In this case, the materials you're talking about are people, talented people out there. You just pay them. After a while, they kind of settle in, and they are no longer hungry as they were when they graduated.
Yeah, true. I mean, the good intentions is a good segue to the next story, actually, too. There was a story on the other side of the pond in London or England in general, Britain, whatever we're calling it. Basically, we'll call it England, I think. I'm pretty sure that's the right one. Google's DeepMind AI, basically, nothing's confirmed. I guess it hasn't really been like formally claimed, but there's been allegations essentially that the 1.6 million patients' records were given to Google AI's system for basically analysis, right? And I think the next quote, if you can throw that up on the screen, is probably the best one. DeepMind apologized and said that it has concentrated on building tools for clinicians rather than thinking about how the project could have been shaped by the needs of the patients, which is ironic because it's the patient's data that's the one being shared, yet there was no, I would say, concern for the patients in general. So, again, if this DeepMind people are doing some, good type of analysis on healthcare data to make better decisions and, essentially help people live longer or cure them of things or find out root causes of issues. All great, good intentions or whatever, right? But at the end of the day, they were not focused on the right set of people that were basically being, taken advantage of in terms of the data being shared, which I think just speaks volumes in terms of good intentions gone wrong, basically.
Can we just? I got to put this statement back up because this is kind of funny. It says DeepMind apologizes for not thinking about the customers or the patients. How ironic is that? We're DeepMind, so we think deeply, and we have to apologize for not thinking deeply about the patients.
I don't think they worded it very well, but
I just had to point that out. I'm sorry.
I mean, we could probably do a deep dive on just AI or I guess more particularly probably ML practices and kind of just the privacy implications of a lot of these ML practices that are in play and where these data sets are really coming from and how people like Google, Amazon, Microsoft even have these great AI models and services provided by like their infrastructure as a service. That data is all coming from somewhere, and it's not just like private data or free data that's available. It's been collected, stored, analyzed, and that's how they do a lot of their work. So even people think that like, I don't care if an extra ad is served to me that's relevant. It's really feeding a much bigger machine. And you'd be crazy to think that they don't have the smartest people in the world trying to figure out how to, stretch that one data point into as many dollars of value essentially as possible, right?
I think the trend is really clear, and we see this again and again. Data exchange of people without the permission of people whose data is being exchanged. DeepMind is essentially the same thing, another incarnation of the same concept, and that fundamentally has to be disallowed. Unless you take the user's permission, you should, and unless the user is informed, unless the user prefers to opt in, that opt-out issue is the thing. And in this case, I think the another issue is it's not just about the data being exchanged, or whose data is being exchanged. It's also who got it, who received it. In this case, it happens to be Google, and as we discussed several times, Google lost the trust in the past decade or so. And if it were some other real research company, I would be surprised that doesn't have any shady business models. I would be surprised if this would result in a lawsuit. But to some extent, maybe we should have a lawsuit tracker somewhere, where maybe lawsuit score tracker. And if a lot of lawsuits are coming related to data sales and whatnot, that shows something, that tells something. They have to maybe self-analyze and whatnot. So it's not just whose data it is being shared and who is buying it. In a lot of cases, there is a correlation between the two.
Yeah, I think we'll get into research a little bit later, but industry-leading research is generally the term that's often used. And, and the irony is when you own the industry, it's industry-leading because no one can really outspend you or do anything beyond you. We'll get into that a little bit later with the Facebook story. I think the next one...
One more just quick point.
Go ahead.
This is a continuing pattern. Once again, it's all about who is creating the data science and their subconscious biases. They're thinking about what's important to them, and that carries into the results of what they do, and they don't take into consideration the patient. I mean, I'm just sorry that just really sticks out to me. Yeah, they're working and trying to make sure the doctors are able to find the cures and create the treatments, which is incredibly important. But also important is the patient and how they how they react and what they think and how they feel and how they'll deal with whatever the end result of what comes out of the the science. That has to be taken into consideration as they develop these things. And what we find time and time again, and it's not just the health industry, it's pretty much everywhere. It's whoever is creating the science and using the artificial intelligence, their proclivities are baked in, and not necessarily all of the people that are going to be impacted by the end result. So I just thought I'll now get off of my soapbox.
Well, maybe we'll do a lighter story real quick for you. I think I found Brent's new big purchase is going to be the Amazon refrigerator. Uh, and I mean, it basically is exactly what you think it would be. The worst kind of use of technology. Obviously, it's going to monitor your buying patterns and suggest new products and recipes because we don't have that. I mean, I don't think smart fridges are new. Like I think Samsung has had like a Android tablet on their refrigerators for a little bit of time, and generally it's more like a camera and maybe like some tasks and like family updates and things like that. You don't know what's really happening in the back end, but this is just like as blatant as it really gets. We're just going to constantly monitor everything that's in your fridge, and we're going to figure out exactly what you have, what you eat, what you do every time you open it, who's opening it, everything like that. And then yeah, maybe we'll suggest a recipe here and there, but really we want to know how often you're getting milk, how often are you opening the fridge for some butter or some cheese or whatever you're grabbing out of there. And then just the amount of information you get out of this is just crazy. Why would you put this in your house for arguably very little upside? I mean, it's just crazy. So like Brent's got this what do you call it, quote up on the screen here. So Amazon won't be manufacturing the smart fridges, but these people said instead they want to partner with home appliance company that's already got sales and a lot of distribution, pre-installed with the Amazon camera hardware, computer vision software, similar technology found in Amazon Go stores, Alexa voice assistant, of course, added to the fridge because you want to be able to talk to the fridge. But that's not a priority apparently. So it's more so being able to track even like the easiest thing they could dump into a fridge is not the priority for them. It's really just the cameras and tracking what you're eating, what you're doing, who's accessing it. So Brent, I assume you already pre-ordered one. When is it expected to come?
Yeah, I haven't. You know, Going back to they're not going to develop it themselves. They're going to, look to manufacture. So once again, we have multiple entities involved. How does it? I mean, I wonder if when you partner, or maybe going forward, when you partner like this, when you have one company that needs somebody to manufacture their widget or whatever you want to call it, do they look at the privacy policies of the company they want to partner with? What role does that play in this? Because the more companies that get involved, the more avenues for data to escape and end up on the black market and be sold and used against the very consumers that you're looking to to do things with. Is that how big a deal is privacy going into these partnerships at this point?
Do you really think Amazon is worried about privacy? After
I'm-
all the
I'm not
things we have
gonna-
been covering, when they're
I'm going
talking
to-
about, again, potentially, a camera inside, possibly a camera outside, and Alexa in there, and it automatically orders for you. And by the way, don't be surprised if you didn't order, but your Alexa did order the fridge for you.
So let's think. They want the information, and if they are able to protect the information and only use the information, I'm good with them using information to find out more ways to sell us stuff, because they're in business to sell us stuff. And I like the fact that if they use the information to create more convenient ways or better products or services, if it's only focused on that, I'm good. But how do companies like Amazon and everybody else, if they are really interested in providing great customer experiences, the privacy aspect of the data is a growing piece of that customer experience. They've got to take that into consideration if they want to keep customers for the long term.
Look at it this way, Brent. It's you're Amazon. You go to deal with, say, LG or Samsung and whatnot, and LG and Samsung will likely say, "We'll manufacture, but what's in it for us?" Right? They will want to differentiate. The deal is going to be, you get to, let's just as again, hypothetically, you get to keep the information, and you do it, there's not a lot of money exchange here, minimal exchange, and you get it for free. You get the data as a result along with it, right? Is that possible? Okay, let me give you an alternative example where it is happening. Google Analytics. How is this different from Google Analytics, where all the companies have Google Analytics embedded on their website for free? What does Google get? Well, they're getting the company's customers' data for free. As a result, Google Analytics is offered for free for businesses. So it is an equivalent to that in the atomized world, in the hardware world. So it's likely happening and will likely continue.
I can't wait to see like like if the data leaks, or even if you get like a data request and it's like Brent opened the fridge at 12:02. He sat in the fridge door did not close until 12:07, so that means he just stood in front of the fridge for 5 minutes at that hour.
Or better yet, Rams are playing. The Rams won. Brent goes to the refrigerator and eats a celebratory meal. When the Rams lose, Brent goes on a binge that will end. We need to stock up immediately to keep him from killing himself. I mean,
more so on Saturday, it'll say, "Hey, there's a Rams game tomorrow. Let's order a case of beer and maybe some pizza and snacks, and like get your game day set up ready." You're kind of slacking in your fridge.
Or provide a bad review like this, and you're locked out of your fridge.
Oh, wow. Or you create something called unfollow everything. And pull all your information out.
But
all right, I'm kind of
one of the things, these days it's becoming hard to find appliances that are not connected, and I really had to hunt to find a smart TV. Most smart TVs are dumb, and it's impossible, almost impossible to find a TV that doesn't have a Wi-Fi signal scanning your networks, and whether you connect a network or not is immaterial. They're basically scanning your networks and passing that out. Possibly, whenever you're connected, all that information is anyway passed. So that itself, the concept itself is crazy. And with Amazon, I guess it gets so-called better, where you don't even have to connect it to the network. They probably realize that people are, the security conscious are no longer connecting the network, so we'll save the Wi-Fi password and save it and connect them automatically. You might as well share it with your neighbors. So Amazon had that taken care. So the entire concept of, I suspect we are going down the path of having to pay a premium if you are privacy conscious to buy a so-called not smart TV or any appliance for that matter.
I mean, dumb TVs are pretty expensive. Having to get like you have to buy those like digital signage things, right? That's like a $4,000 or $5,000 thing. That's like not even that good of a screen, and you're just paying that premium for what? Like digital signage is. I mean, that's a rant on its own. But I don't really understand how those screens are so crazy expensive. But I think this Ian has a lot of good comments too.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to say Ian White is like going to town with some good stuff here. Let me pop a couple. I wonder what happens when these appliances are widely available and folks move. How do you delink the appliance? Yeah.
I mean, you can like deregister like an Alexa device. I'm sure you can factory reset it or something like that, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't know.
That doesn't suck your data back, right?
Yeah.
I mean, once the data is collected, it's collected. And I think that's the issue here. I think going forward, we know how important and how you can either get cash up front, or you can. It's almost like you can teach a person to. You could give a person a fish, or you can teach them to fish and they'll eat for life. You can pay for somebody's a partnership with cash, or you could just let them have access to the data and you can let them figure out ways that they can monetize it. I think that's where we are right now. And there's got to be something done here about, the exchange of cash. It's done. Once you give the cash, the monetization is done with. But when you exchange data, the monetization is just beginning, and that's the problem, I think.
And it spans owners, just like Zillow collects information about a house throughout the lifetime of a house. Well, now we have appliances doing that, joining that race. Every
Right.
appliance has history of it. Won't be surprised when Zillow also sees the appliance history.
I mean, it could be a selling factor, but honestly, like this fridge thing, I think will be like the epitome of it. Because think about it this way: if I was like, let's say Amazon in this example, right? I would say that, you know what, maybe the lights on the fridge, or we'll introduce a security measure for kids, because we'll always say it's for kids, so that means it's good and nobody will question it. And I don't want the kids going through the fridge between like 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. or something like that, right? No night snacks or anything. So you have to type in a PIN code or something on the screen to get in, right? And in order to have that kind of time-based authorization, we need to connect it to the internet. To even set up the fridge, you have to have it connected to the internet, right? And so then now it's automatically connected. And let's say you didn't log into an Amazon account or anything like that. Once it's connected to the internet, it's going to track everything about you and associate it with maybe an anonymous ID. And as we know, that anonymous ID is only easily going to get de-anonymized in the back end through either data brokers or other Amazon services. The second you log into Amazon.com on your laptop on the same Wi-Fi network, it knows exactly who you are, regardless if you ever signed into that fridge or not, right? So, I mean, it's even if you like sign out, short of just like unplugging the fridge and throwing it away, I don't think there's really much of a way around it, because I think the rise of internet-enabled devices that require sign-in in order to start being functional is on the increase, right? Because they know that otherwise we can just brick a device if you don't connect it to the internet, and that's how we'll basically get 100% opt-in, right? So there's no offline usage.
Yeah, I think we're spending way too much on Amazon. We'll do a review after Brent gets it. So
Yeah, a deep dive.
Okay.
we can do the show from the kitchen. Do you guys want to talk about this Google one? I mean, government stuff's always tricky, but the government orders Google to identify anyone who searched for a sexual assault victim's name, address, or telephone number. And so this was, I think the term they use is keyword-based warrants, where basically once you type in a certain keyword, you're automatically available to be like investigated, essentially, because you've searched for a term that was suspicious or flagged or whatever it is, right? Arguably a very dangerous precedent, because you can start out with sexual violence victims and good intentions, and then it goes down a path of something else and slippery slope later. The fact that you can get a warrant based on a simple keyword search seems a little suspect. Yeah, I don't think this is good long term. Long story short,
it definitely is not. But there are some things that are unclear. But the immediate questions that come up is is it only for people who have searched with them after they logged into Google? Or do they consider any kind of search query? And maybe what happens when you clear your search history if you're logged in? Is that still kept? Well, you clear your search history, it's still kept for, say, governmental reasons. Where does it go there? All of these are unclear. I mean, if you're logged out, that doesn't mean Google doesn't know about it. We talked about fingerprinting and whatnot in the past, and due to fingerprinting, where there could be an error rate, and if you're issuing a warrant on that, it's going to be a slippery slope here. And yeah.
And I don't have anything to add to that, because the slippery slope, and it's getting slipperier by the minute. And it all depends on who's the people. We always talk about the organizations, but these organizations are made up of people, and these people have their own, thoughts and concerns and likes and dislikes, and that all seems to go into the decision for going after certain things in a certain way. I don't like this at all.
I don't think anybody likes it. We can spend a few minutes on probably the biggest story of the week. Our friends at Facebook seem to have quite the week, between an outage, a 60-minute special, a congressional testimony, and then a PR response, and then a Zuckerberg response. pretty much this was their week, and I don't think it went very well for them, to say the least. I would say like the focus of the whole story was not so much, I would say, privacy to an extent. It was a lot more about like the harm that Facebook is doing in society and like all that kind of stuff. So not so much on topic, but I mean, it's definitely a story, but I mean, most people probably have an idea of what's been going on, and there's a lot of good writing on it in general. But do you guys have any like hot takes off of what's kind of transpired over the week, or just not good? And that's pretty much it.
This is exactly what I expected from Facebook, the way they responded. And so let's just say I don't have high expectations on Facebook, and they certainly met those expectations.
I'll just say it's always interesting when we know who the faces of the company are. It's Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg. But they had, in response to the person that had the testimony, the former employee, they broke out somebody I had never heard of. And that poor lady had to try to defend all this stuff. And I it's just so, to me, it's kind of a cynical approach when, you got the main faces out there when things are, pretty good. But when stuff like this happens, they trot somebody else out who is this person? Where's Zuck? Where's Sheryl?
I think Zuck was on a boat, Brent.
I was talking about the lawsuit tracker or cases like these in the past, right? If somebody is following these, there is obviously a trend and a pattern here. Now, at some point, you got to look inside and question, is this what we want to be doing? And that doesn't seem to be happening.
Yeah. Two things that I thought were kind of interesting, or not really interesting. First is funny, I guess. I don't know if you guys remember when like Amazon was going through like their unionization drama a couple months ago, and like they were trying to shut down the union, I think in like Alabama or somewhere like that. They got like some new social media person, and that social media person was just like super snarky and like replying to a bunch of people like, you don't really think we make our employees like urinate in water bottles? And it turns out obviously they were, but like it just like became like a very like aggressive social media person handling the Amazon account. And then in Facebook's PR response, they basically just like trashed this woman as if she was like a nobody. They were like, like she's never had a meeting with the C-level thing. There's nothing more like, I would say like self-righteous, or I mean, technically I think the term is douchey, but I'm not really sure what the PC term is. But like to like have like a PR response like, oh, they've never met with the C-level person, so they don't know what's going on, or they're not that important, and she has no direct reports, therefore her opinions are like irrelevant or whatever. Like it was just like a lot of like shaming unnecessarily, which obviously is not a very good thing. But the second thing I think was interesting was kind of what we talked about earlier on about research and stuff like that, right? Because a lot of the story was based around what kind of research has been done, what the results are kind of showing. And Zuck's response was, I think, hilarious in itself, because I think it was like 5 or 7 times he writes basically industry leading research as what they've been doing. And he's like, we wouldn't be doing this industry leading research if we weren't trying to get to the root causes, right? But I think the tobacco analogy is probably hyperbole to an extent, but it doesn't mean that there's not a correlation. Tobacco obviously had a bunch of research based on, high profile, highly paid educational people that were well respected in their fields, and they basically just bought them off. And there's nothing, there's no doubt in my mind that that's not the same thing that other people do as well, right? Facebook does it, Google does it, all these large companies that publish these, types of reports. If a vendor sponsors a report, it's said with a grain of salt. You're not going to come out with a report that says like, we suck. And even then, how bad is it that you paid for a report and that report comes out and says, you guys are terrible for society? It's like, all right, cool, man, calm down. You need to find a different job, or we'll move you to a different field of research. You can't be, those aren't the conclusions we really want you to be making with this kind of research, right? And so I think that's kind of problematic, right? I mean, like and again, you're industry leading research because you are the industry. I mean, that's why you're industry leading. Like you're not really doing it any other way. But I mean, at the end of the day, what really happens, I don't know. I think everybody's kind of just upset about Facebook in general. Nobody really seems to be like, oh yeah, they're doing great. Like, they're good for society. I'm not sure anybody really feels that strongly positively about it, right? Everyone's got a gripe, whether it's, one issue or another. They're just taking it from every angle, which is not very good for them.
And when a vendor does a research, and if if it basically aligns with what they're thinking, for sure the research comes out publicly. If it doesn't, which it didn't in this case, that tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah, because they never published the reports, right? The actual research reports were never actually shared. And it's like, if you just want to be transparent, you would just share the actual findings and be like, look, see for yourself. It's not that bad.